Number 1 and number 2 on the test review look very similar, but the difference is number 1 is adding. You see this plus sign in between, and number 2 is multiplying. So number 1, because it's adding, you just need to combine like terms. So this 2x and the 5x can go together, so it will be 7. 2 plus 5 is 7. X. It's not going to be 7x squared because x squared means x times x. And then this negative 1 plus 8 can go together because they're just regular numbers. Negative 1 plus 8 is positive 7. Number 2, we need to multiply instead. 2 times 5 is 10 x squared. 2 times 8 is 16, positive 16x. Negative 1 multiplied with 5 is going to be negative 1, negative 5x, and negative 1 multiplied with 8 is negative 8, and no x's here. Now to get our final answer, we just combine like terms, so start with the 10x squared. 16x minus 5x is 11x, and then we have a minus 8 as the answer. For number 3, we have this negative in front of the parentheses, so we need to distribute by changing the sign of everything inside. This positive x squared becomes a negative x squared. This negative 4x becomes a positive 4x. And then finally this negative 1 becomes a positive 1. So all that happened with the parentheses is everything changes signs. Positive becomes negative, negative becomes positive. So cross this out so I don't accidentally look at this again. Now let's combine like terms. So we start with the x squared because that's the variable with the highest exponent. So here we can put a 1 in front. So 3 minus 1 is 2x squared. Here we have negative 1x, plus 4 is positive 3x, and finally we have positive 9 plus 1, which is positive 10. Here the two parentheses are right next to each other, though this is number 4. So we need to multiply. 4 times, this all we have is a 4, so 4, but we have 2 x's, so x squared. The 4x times negative 2 is going to be negative 8, and we have an x and a y multiplied together. Here we have 7y times x, so that's going to be positive 7xy. And finally we have 7 times negative 2, which is negative 14y squared. Now combining like terms, we have the 4x squared. These two can go together. Negative 8 plus 7 because they both have the xy. So negative 8 plus 7 is negative 1 xy. And then we have the negative 14y squared. For number 5, the two parentheses are right next to each other, so we know we're multiplying. 3 multiplied with 3 is 9x, and x is x squared. 3 times 7 is 21, and we have 1x. Negative 7 times 3 is going to be negative 21 x, and negative 7 times positive 7 is negative 49. Now let's combine like terms. The x squares right here, 9x squared. The x's, you see this 21 minus 21? That's a 0. And then finally we bring down the negative 49. So that's all we need to write. The 0, we don't need to write it down. Okay, for this problem, we want to set the bottom equal to 0, so x minus 4. X plus 4 is equal to 0, which means that x is equal to negative 4. So we can set up our division. So negative 4 over here, so here that's a 1, so 1, negative 3, negative 28. Then copy this down. Negative 4 multiplied with 1 is negative 4. Negative 3 minus 4 is negative 7. Negative times negative is a positive, and we have a 28. So negative 28 plus 28 is going to be a 0. So here we have no remainder. So our answer is going to be 1x, or just an x by itself. And we begin with exponent 2. So 1 less than that would be x to the first power, or just x minus 7. And that's the answer. And we have no remainder. For number 7, we want to set the bottom equal to 0, but we can do this in our head. So this plus 1, move it, becomes negative 1. So we have negative 1. In this 4 in front, we need to divide negative 1 over 4. And so now let's copy it down. We have 12 for the x squared, and for the x, we have negative 17. And then for the constant, we have a negative 5. Copy down the 12. Now let's multiply. Positive 12 times a negative 1 over 4, that will be a negative. So 12 times 1 is 12 divided by 4, that's a 3. Or you can divide first. You can go 12 divided by 4, which is 3, times 1. That's still 3. Negative 17 minus 3 is negative 20. Negative times a negative is a positive. Then 20 divided by 4 is 5. 5 times 1 on the top, that's a 5. So we have no remainder. But be careful to remember, because we divided this by 4, so we need to divide all of this by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is going to be 3x. And because we started with x to the second power, so 1 less than that, x to the first power. It's 3x. Negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. That's the answer, and we have no remainder. For number 8, we are going to set the bottom equal to 0. So this negative 3, move it, becomes a positive 3. Divided by 5. So let's copy this down. So for the x cubed, we have 5. For the x squared, we have negative 23. For the x term, we have 52. And for the constant, we have a negative 30. So bring this down. That's a 5. Positive and positive, that's a positive. So 5 divided by 5 is 1, times 3 is 3. And then negative 23 plus 3 is negative 20. A negative times a positive is a negative. So 20 divided by 5 is 4. 4 times the top, 4 times 3 is 12. 52 minus 12 is going to be 40. And then positive times positive is a positive. 40 divided by 5 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. So we have negative 30 plus 24, which is negative 6. So our answer, because it's asking for just the remainder, our answer is negative 6. That's the remainder. For number 9, we also want to only find the remainder. So x minus 2, let's set that equal to 0. So that means x is equal to positive 2. Then let's set this up. So 5, and that's x to the third power. And then x to the second power is 8. X to the first power is negative 2. And notice we're missing the constant term. So let's put a 0 here as a placeholder. Now let's bring this down. We got 5 here. 2 multiplied with 5 is positive 10. 8 plus 10 is 18. 2 multiplied with 18 is going to be 36. Negative 2 plus 36 is going to be 34. Then 2 times 34 is going to be 68. And 0 plus 68 is going to be 68. And so that's the remainder. Our remainder is right here. 68 is the answer. For number 10, so set the bottom equal to 0. So move the negative 1, becomes a positive 1. Divided by 2. So 8, that's an x squared. And then for the x term, that's missing 0. And then we have a negative 5. So be very careful of that, because on this problem, if you miss that 0, you will get the wrong answer. Copy down the 8. Positive times positive is a positive. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 times 1 is still 4. 0 plus 4 is 4. And positive times positive is a positive. And then so 4 divided by 2 is 2. Times 1 is going to be 2. So negative 5 plus 2 is going to be negative 3. Remember, we need to divide by negative 2. By positive 2. Right here. So what we get is 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4x to the first power, because it's 1 less than this. And then 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then for the remainder, we go negative 3 over 2x minus 1. That's the answer.